Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Metaphysical Egypt. I'm Alan Peoples with Patricia Aoyan Lehman.
So today we're going to talk about the ancient magnetic song lines in motion. And basically, these are all of Earth's currents, but our focus is going to be on the ancient magnetic equator and the energies that are moving, as we've been speaking about in several episodes now, of this energetic matrix that is what gives us our life force. It's our container, and it's also where consciousness lies. So let's go ahead and get started. We're looking at a beautiful picture of the front of the temple of Chidambaram in India. Allan and I were there several years ago when we led a tour of the four. There's an alignment of the five element temples: earth, air, water, and fire. And Chidambaram is ether, which is just, I mean, we can't even begin to touch on the powerful symbolism and the container of cosmology, the creation stories and the stories of cosmology, and even the everything about how we exist and breathe in this world today is all embodied by this magnificent structure. But first, I found some fascinating information. These are things we've touched on before, but I want to start, again, connecting dots to really, help us understand how these energetic, how this breath of life works in all its fractal patterns. Because once we understand, it's all about understanding the patterns of energy. We've said before many times, our perception of reality, we think it's linear, but it's not. It's a hologram. It's a fractal patterned hologram that emerges from a great breath of life, from that 0 point, that moment of no thing, nothing. And suddenly we have this amazing perception of reality as a movement through time and space. And so I found these quotes as a translation by David Klotz, an Egyptologist, in a paper called The Temple of Esna, an evolving translation. So, Esna is just an incredible structure and it has so much powerful symbolism within it, said to be from Roman times. But again, the Romans basically never came to Egypt, but what they did is, they would basically say, I want this built, and I want, and it was the Egyptian priests, that were controlling the construction and the artwork and the illustration and the symbolism and mythology that went in within these temples. And anyway, let's get to the point, because we're going to talk about Ninth again, the net, right? Mm-hmm. This net of magnetic patterned energy. And here on one of the columns at Esna, it says, Ninth, she who arose from Nun, right? Nothing, the living serpent. And we're back to the serpent again. Sovereign. The breath of the earth is under her command. The breath of the earth. Think about this. She who arrived as one and created millions.
Would you say the breath of the earth, as in the Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of the earth?
The heartbeat of the earth, but also all the patterns of energy and motion, right? She's the electromagnetic currents. As that scalar energy falls into form, it becomes this electromagnetic matrix. And that is the matrix of our perception of reality. And those of you that have seen the movie, start opening your minds and remembering, because it's really touching on this ancient knowing and concept of how we perceive reality. She who arrived as one and created millions. So she arrives as this great living serpent, and suddenly all these serpent sine wave breaths are emerging, right, from her center. There was no other except her. No God completed in her image. She who conceives plans, the great architect. So again, she's Seshet, but she's ninth. She's basically, if she's the one that breathes out into many, she is all the divinely feminine netters or forces of nature. She exists as all of them. So she who conceives plans, who came out in the beginning, and who sits upon her throne, right? The ark, the throne, in Esna, in Upper Egypt. She is the Uraeus. Now, the Uraeus is the cobra we see coming out of the temples, right? That they wear, the third eye. Well, the Uraeus, you see the pattern I have in the center image on the bottom? That is that great serpent that we see connecting the two hemispheres of the brain. She is the great Uraeus of the earth, of all patterning, of the universe, of our galaxy. All these cycles within cycles within cycles. She is that divine, and I'll say it, ancient magnetic equator in a patterning of all life as we perceive it. We have one on our, right here within our perception of ourself. We have this dividing our positive and negative, our masculine and feminine as we perceive it, our intuitive side and our pragmatic side, right? This is phenomenal. We can't reduce it to just, oh, I have this two hemispheres of the brain. The earth has two hemispheres, and our galaxy and our universe, and everything is a fractal pattern. So she is the Uraeus who came about before them all. She who began existence when no beings existed. All that exists came into being after she came into existence. So this is powerful knowing. And again, there's that Taurus field symbol. She is the Taurus field that all the other Taurus fields emerge from. So we're thinking three-dimensionally, but start, if we can open our minds to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 dimensions, right? We're looking at a patterning that's beyond our comprehension in a three-dimensional world. But if we know it exists, that's the beginning of awakening our levels of awareness and all those senses that the indigenous Hakim told us we had.
There's our friend.
Oh dear. Should I just keep going?
Just give him a second to.
Okay. Isn't this phenomenal?
It's a big leap to make. Suddenly a netter who is an individual is now all of them. It's kind of this kind of thinking.
Okay, I'll address that now. So, when I say she is all of the divine feminine netters, this is an understanding that, those of us who study ancient Egypt have, that all of these netters, and we discussed this in the beginning, in one of our first episodes, that everything emerges from the one as this great breath. And that breath is both, it's the sine wave up and downs, masculine and feminine. And all of the netters, the angles of light, emerge from that one source. But as it begins to divide, it just divides into masculine and feminine. And then all the feminine, as Hakim explained it, we have 360, right, netters, early netters, half being masculine and half being feminine. But all of that emerges from the original divine feminine and divine masculine, that all emerged from the one who is all. Remember, I said in the last episode, as we all emerge from the one great source. And we do have a masculine and feminine, even though within us, we are all masculine and feminine. There's a 2% difference between a man and a woman that makes us uniquely, woman or man. And I don't want to get into the genders and the mixed and all of that, right? Mm-hmm. But, on a basic level, it's a binary world. And in
Absolutely.
negative and positive charge is,
and that's reflected, like we said, in the fractal pattern of everything in the universe.
Everything that exists, exactly. And then the illustration on the right, I just saw this, and it's so beautiful. The illustration of Mary. There we have Mary again, goddess of the moon, weaving the moonlight, because night is the weaver, and we have these weaving goddesses that emerge from mythologies all over the world, cross-culturally. And it's the same understanding of weaving liquid light into form, right? So just beautiful, beautiful, knowing that we've somehow forgotten. So I include this Taurus field in front of us because it shows this beautiful movement of energy in a Taurus field, where it's always one side feeding and seeding the other, but creating this beautiful energetic matrix where consciousness exists. It's hard to imagine, but again, when you see this energy in motion, you realize there is a beginning and there is an end. There's a moment we come into center, and then suddenly, we breathe again. It's eternal life. There is no death. And it also has it's binary, it's polar, it's dual, two sides. And this again, this concept that this exists in patterns within patterns, and of course it exists on our earth. And to understand that is to have another level of understanding of perception. Remember, I say, the Egyptians said south is up. Upper Egypt is in the south, and lower Egypt is in the north. And it's the south that feeds the north. And right now we are looking up to the north and for our perception of reality. Everything's defined by the circumpolar stars to the north. But what happens if the magnetics flip? And these are the things we're going to be talking about. And so at ninth again, the knit. It is she who spans to the very end of all this in her true body, in her name of linear eternity. It's a perception, not a reality. How great of plans for all time. She is the grand architect. The red and white crowns are for her Ka, life force, right? Red and white, Upper and Lower Egypt. The uraeus is inscribed with her hieroglyph. So it's showing us that the Ka of the earth, Upper and Lower Egypt, the red and white crowns, exist as not only, it's not only the life force of a being or of Egypt, but of the land itself, of every basic, torus field, of every binary set, of the hemispheres of our brain, right? And this is why I've been likening him to all these things from the very beginning. They understood this fractal patterning of life as, an energetic matrix. And this is just a beautiful, it's a drawing, a sketch. A woman I've just connected with on social media is writing a book, and she's including information about Abdel Hakim Alian, using him as one of her characters. So we had an interchange of information, and I saw that her granddaughter had created this illustration for her book of Sachet. And here you can see, she's wearing the beautiful leopard skin, which, that says she is the knower of this. She is basically also considered the grand architect as an expression of ninth. And with these cats and these leopards, but look at how she even understands that the leopard has the positive and negative side of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just love when I see these things, because this is all within us. This is within our being. We understand these patterns on a subconscious level. And so also from this same paper, they have this illustration of Heka's name spelled. And now you'll see Heka's name spelled in different ways. And in Esna, these expressions come up, and you can see the paws of the lion, right? That lion as part of Heka's name. And this is, again, so important, that feline energy as currency. And this great Ka of Ra, this great ancient magnetic equator that divides the hemispheres of the earth, happening at Giza with this wonderful Sphinx, or Tefnut, or it's all these different ways of illustrating the same concept. And Heka is, I have an illustration on the far right of Heka, and you can see him mastering the currents as serpents, magnetic currency as serpents. And he has the tail, the back end, on his standard, on his crown, which is, again, really fascinating, because it always has to be part of this feline energy. beginning and end and coming together. Every beginning is a new ending. So here is Chidambaram that I spoke about when we began. Some beautiful imagery. It is an absolutely spectacular temple to visit. Located at the center point of the world's magnetic equator. This would be the one today. After 8 years of research, the Western scientists have found out that the place where Lord Netaraja, which is, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, sorry, who is Shiva, his big toe is placed at the center point of the world's magnetic equator, according to the Hindu tradition. It is located 11 degree at the 11-degree latitude, which means that centrifugal, which we've talked about, force is directed upwards towards the sky, Akash. And this means that this is an ideal location to free ourselves from the Earth's magnetic influences, right? The place where everything meets. 0 point. Looking at it spiritually, one can free themselves from the worldly influences and channel our energies upwards, which can assist our spiritual awakening. So this is a temple in India. It's a place of pilgrimage because, again, it's the spot. It's dedicated to ether and so much more. It is also a hall of records, if you will, and I'm going to get into that in a moment. And on the far right, we see this beautiful cosmic dance of Lord Netaraja, who symbolizes the motion of the universe as sustained by Lord Shiva. This is probably one of the most iconic images from Chidambaram. And again, representing this whole site represents ether, right? Which is basically that scalar energy. That comes down to create, it's liquid light becoming form. And this beautiful golden roof is just spectacular. The golden roof of the Sanctum Sanctorum, Holy of Holies, of this temple is said to be located at the lotus heart of the universe. Just beautiful, right? And the lotus, again, being that breath of life at the heart, breathing out into life. This golden roof stage is the Sanctum Sanctorum of the Chidambaram temple and houses Shiva in 3 forms. Physical form. As physical form, the anthropomorphological form as an appearance of the Lord Netaraja called the Sakata, oh gosh, help me.
You're on your own for these ones.
Yeah, I apologize for any distortions of the real pronunciations. But what's important is he represents physical form, semi-form, which I called shape-shifting, right? And the formless, all the different forms that make up this perception. But also these 3 things are what we move through in our, as we precess through the ages, we move through, we fall into form, and then we have a moment, this age where we're shape-shifting, and then and and then we're like moving into the formless, and then boom, we flip and fall back into form again. So we have 4 seasons in a great year, just like we have in an annual year. And this title that it's known to be the sky of consciousness, again, it's just a journey of perception lying within the magnetic currency. And as we move, as we precess, and as we have this tilting of the earth and coming back, all of these things as we move, in the angle of the earth and the pattern of the sun hitting it, this is what's shifting the electromagnetic construct in order to shift the way we perceive reality, if you can envision that. And of course, there's so many other factors, and I am not an expert, but with everything I've read, it's just amazing how, just these dynamics can, is it the dynamics forcing, again, if all of this is an illusion, are we just looking at a beautiful, this grand architect created this beautiful pattern illusion to tell us, what our game board looks like for perceiving reality. I don't know. What do you think, Allan?
Well, it seems to me like what you're describing is a change in frequency, just like if you imagine that the reality we perceive right now is being analogous to a station on the radio,
Exactly, choosing the channel.
the channel is changing, and as it does, you hear two channels at once sometimes. You know, you can hear two songs over each other, or a bit
Exactly.
of or static. This is as we're going from physical form to semi-physical to formless. It's like going through the stations on a radio.
It is, and it is.
That's how our brain decodes this reality.
And it's basically
It's a
changing how
your
we
perception.
view, right, how we view ourselves, how we interact with the game board, and the
So
game
in
board.
a way, we're not changing at all. It's just
No,
everything is changing around us,
exactly how
and
we're
our
perceiving it.
perception of it makes it
It's
look like
it's
it's changing.
exactly. It's if it's all an illusion and it's all a game board, then this really, if you can open your mind and understand, and you understand how the energy works, if you know the patterns. It's like getting your horoscope for the day and it's saying, you're going to have a rotten day, stay home, or it's going to be fantastic, go out and play. If you understand how the pattern works, it can help you navigate those patterns, harness that energy to have for the most benefit, for how you perceive your body, mind, and spirit. You know what I say? If you understand, it's like we can have a beautiful, healthy, full, fantastic experience in all of these different forms, physical, semi, formless, if we understand what it is we're moving through. But when we fell into form, we forgot that great connection to all that is. We forgot that we were, playing on a game board, and suddenly we fell into this separation consciousness where everything, it seems painful at times. And we're moving through this up and down without any knowledge. We're limited to five senses, and so we don't really know what it is we're experiencing anymore. And I think this is that great time of awakening to remind us that, hey, if you know how to harness this, what's happening, it's your mirror. And if you project something different to the mirror, change your perception, change your reality, it can be that simple. Sure, sure. Seems so much easier when you just say it, right? And so I've been saying all along that I believe that the pyramids, the temples, these ancient structures are all halls of records. They've been given to us by a culture that had I'll say a different. No one is better. We say higher consciousness. It's more expanded consciousness. But they're leaving us all this knowing. And so just within Chidambaram, and this is written by Harsh V. Ashok, Chidambaram is an example which shows a great knowledge of our ancient Indian rishis had about astronomy, astrology, geometry. The architecture of the temple is based on the human body, thus showing their knowledge of anatomy. The temple is tilted slightly toward the right to give a place for our heart, which is to the left of the lungs. It has 9 entrances corresponding to the 9 orifices of our body. The roof is made of 21,600 gold sheets to denote 21,600 breaths taken by the human being in a day. Wow. Do you recognize that number? Because you take one of the zeros off and we have 2,160 years in an age of the great year.
Everything is
Wow.
fractal. Yeah.
Everything is fractal. Exactly. These gold sheets are fixed to the gopuram or shakara using 72,000 gold nails, which denote the total number of nadis or nerves in the human body. There's your neural network, right?
And
And
72 also being 1 degree of precession.
exactly. Thank you. So isn't this just phenomenal? The nadis transfer energy to those body parts which are invisible. There are 5 steps leading to the sanctum, which represent the 5 syllables of the great mantra of Shiva. The 4 pillars holding up the hall represent the 4 Vedas. The Golden Temple has 28 pillars, which denote 28 methods of worshiping Shiva. Now, these all have an even deeper metaphoric, symbolic meaning. These pillars support the 64 beams of the roof, representing the 64 arts. The cross beams represent the blood vessels running through the human body. The 9 pots on top of the golden roof represent the 9 types of energies or Shaktis. The 18 pillars in the adjacent hall represent the 18 Puranas. The dance of Shiva as Naharaja is seen in the temple, denotes the cosmic dance of energy of protons and neutrons. They have an image of Shiva in front of CERT. Just saying.
CERN.
CERN, sorry. Why did I say CERT? Thank you, Allan. Other architectural features like the 5 steps connecting the Kanaka Sabha signify the 5 elements as well as the 5 elements of Pancha Shar. All right. But you get my idea. This is phenomenal what's held within, this structure for sure. Within the Great Pyramid, we're going to do podcasts on the Giza complex coming up, and we're going to talk about the incredible information, the speed of light, the distance between Earth and the sun and the moon, and all of these things are all embodied by the Great Pyramid. These structures are, again, created by a certain, by people with a certain level of consciousness, that this knowledge, it's embedded in how we create. When you're in the groove, when you're in sync with nature, we have this knowing of all these embedded patterns of life within us, and we create with that, right? But with intention, possibly for this time on Earth, when we will begin to unravel these clues again and begin to feel our way back to center. And again, I can only point out, no one has to go to sacred sites, but my gosh, how they can awaken us even subconsciously. When you just look at a structure as beautiful as the roof on Chidambaram temple, and whether you're recognizing all those little things subconsciously, your soul, your beingness is knowing, it's having, I believe we do remember on different levels of consciousness. There's an awakening.
And it's not incidental. That's what these buildings were designed to do. They're still working. They're still doing what they were designed to do.
Exactly. They were built to be living structures, which we've talked about a lot, harnessing nature's, Earth's currents and aligned with, the currents of heaven. And they are alive and they're speaking to us, whether we actively hear them or not. As I've said so many times, Egypt changes your life, whether you know it or not. You will, you never leave Egypt the same as, the same person as you were when you got there. Even if it's just subtle changes, something happens when you interact with the land and the structures. It's just amazing. So here I'm paying tribute to this, to our friend Lisbeth. Who traveled with us actually on that tour. I met her on my first tour of Egypt, and she studied with Raja Dick. Again, I have trouble, but he was known to be the master of Chidambaram, and he passed away in 2010. And she had studied with him for decades, and she carried on his tradition. She has you can still visit her website at ChidambaramHiddenTreasure.com. And they met, I think he was traveling to Holland, and she just fell in love with the classic Indian dance, Hindu dancing, all the different movements and each movement, each hand gesture having a symbolic message. She was just beautiful. We have her dancing here. I have a picture of her dancing here. I think we were at Hampi. Yeah, we were in Hampi. But at any rate, she says in Chidambaram, Shiva dances the cosmic dance of creation and destruction as Nataraja, king of dance, the dance of atoms, stars, and galaxies. It can lay claim to many unique features. The Trimurti, or Trinity of Hinduism, Brahma the creator, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the destroyer are all worshipped within one complex. Shiva, who is presiding deity of this temple, is worshipped here in three aspects: as form, formless, uh, and formless form. I say shape shifting, and as formless. So again, this knowingness that is on, it's on where the magnetic equator would be today, although it's fluctuating. But she and I had many wonderful conversations comparing. She even came to Egypt and spent some time with me, comparisons of what she was taught and what I was uncovering and taught by Hakim and uncovering in Egypt, and it was exactly the same things. And
Right.
she had this concept of this ancient magnetic equator, which, from her understanding, sort of ran. It basically divided the northern part of India from Tamil Nadu, where there's so much ancient knowing, and they even view themselves, as she told me, as different from the people of the north, that they're, and this was that great dividing line. And we find this, when we travel around the world to these sites that were on the ancient magnetic equator, we begin to unravel this same mythology, the same knowing, and we see the same earth currents, I think I've already talked about. We see, this iron popping up, the Phi of the Phi line, on the Giza Plateau, and we see it in Angkor Wat, we see it in different areas. But there's other things that we're seeing, and again, connecting the dots, with these same patterns of energy.
Well, a lot of researchers assume that these ancient cultures must have had contact necessarily because they're all expressing the same ideas. But what if it's
Exactly.
just that that idea was as obvious to them as 2 + 2 = 4? It wasn't necessarily a greater culture that seeded these other cultures, but it's just common knowledge that everybody knew.
Exactly. And in fact, I say that a lot. In Australia, they always talk about the original people, and some of them today can travel the song lines. And they'll talk about it as they sort of, they disappear and suddenly, they come back and they've traveled the song line. But in a way, if you're in that
I think that
formless or
happens to me sometimes.
I know exactly. Well, with my astral travel, it felt like that. Exactly. I don't know if I disappeared, but I was going all over the place. But that same, it's that what you were saying, there is no here and there. There is no time and space. It's the illusion, it's the game board. And if you have that consciousness to understand that, and then you really get to play with the game board, right? And this really explains why we see this same simile. But then we fall into form, and suddenly we forget our connection to all that is, and we start to develop the uniqueness, the Tower of Babel. We no longer can even understand each other, let alone,
Hmm.
um, it's all there for us. They tell us how this happened, but they did it through myth and symbolism and metaphor, and we took it literally.
Well, it's
And
just like the energy lines on the Earth, the magnetic equator, and then splits and separates and separates and separates farther and farther more into smaller and
exactly.
smaller lines. We get farther and farther away, and eventually it'll come back together again.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So, at any rate, I loved it when she pointed out. Here we are back at the face of the temple of Chidambaram, and look at the beautiful colors. It's
Hmm.
really just beautiful to see. And Lisbeth pointed these out to me, and I think it's incredible because on either side of the temple there are these windows with swastikas, and of course, on one side it's going one way, the swastika is spinning one way, and the other side it's spinning the other. And this is showing us these dynamics of the dual opposing reversing spins. This is so incredible. This is the dynamic Walter Russell talks about. We exist as dual opposing waveform. And of course, that which divides the hemispheres of the brain and the earth, it's dual opposing waveform. we're looking at it in the heavens, right? We see the spin of the Big Dipper, but when the magnetics flip, our perceptions changes and we perceive. And again, you have to get out of the physics of it. When I talk to a scientist, they'll say, "Oh, well, if the earth, if the sun was going to rise in the west and the earth reversed its spin and all the things we're about to discuss," they always say, "Oh my gosh, the earth would just explode." But that's if you believe there is an earth. But the dynamics work if you understand that consciousness is in the magnetic field. So when the magnetic field flips, then we perceive ourselves, right? Because at this point, then the north will see the south. Suddenly, our perception of the world will start to spin the opposite direction. It's not necessarily that you're going to take a globe, turn it over, spin it the other way, and say everybody survives. But if you understand that everything's in, perceived through magnetic energy or electromagnetic energy, it's only the energy that's flipping. The patterns are flipping. We reverse our perception. Suddenly we're heart-based and not mind-based. We flip the way we consciously view the world. And as even the yugas say, it's always rising and ascending ages, right? We descend and then we rise. It's not like we descend to the lowest point and suddenly, oh, we awaken. No, we have to ascend again to our highest state. And it's that constant continual form that needs and requires a reversal of perception.
like
So,
like Osiris, turn over and rise.
exactly. So we are going to continue. We're not going to leave you there because we're going to continue to illustrate this through through a few more podcasts so you can really understand where I'm coming at, and begin to understand that, it doesn't have to make sense in our linear world. It only needs to be understood as our linear world is made up of electromagnetic energy in motion. This is the key. Before
Which
you
is
think I'm
constantly changing and causes changes in perception. And
exactly.
I always think of it like if you look at a wagon wheel, you know where I'm going, that's
Yes,
spinning forward. At some point, it's going to spin so fast going forward that it looks like it's spinning in reverse, even though it's clearly moving forward.
exactly.
It is moving forward. It didn't change directions, but our perception of it changed.
That's exactly right. Or when we perceive like Mercury in retrograde,
Mm,
we suddenly we perceive it as reversing, right? It's been, but it's not. It's our perception because of it's that bicycle thing, or exactly sort of what you just described. It's almost like objects appear to be reversing, but they really aren't. It's all in perspective.
right. And it
Uh,
makes me think of the whole flat Earth controversy as well too, because if you think
exactly.
about it, the Earth is flat as we're standing on the ground looking straight. But if you pull back, thousands of miles and look at it, it's a globe.
Well, it also relates to where our perception in consciousness is in any given moment. We are the point. Everything's happening in one space, right? Of nothingness.
Mm-hmm.
However, we have a perception that we breathe out into what? The line, which then breathes out into the four corners of the earth, as you will, the land, Kemet. Well, that's flat earth. But then it starts to spin. We have three dimensionality.
Mm-hmm.
You see where I'm going. So,
And what comes next?
and what comes next? So exactly, all these other dimensions of
Fourth
beingness
dimensionality, or do we
and
skip straight to
perception.
fifth?
Exactly. Will there come a time we're all walking through what we perceive now to be doors and walls? There will be the time that we do walk through them. And again, when you understand this, you'll start to look at some of the old mythologies and really ancient legends and realize that maybe there were fairies and still are for those with
Yeah.
eyes to see. All of the things we think is just cartoonish and imagination, and is has a base in reality. Hakeem kept saying it. There is nothing new under the sun, and anything you can think of exists. Because your imagination, is is basically coming from this great field of conscious of energy and motion. It's all there, and we just draw from it through our own attitude and inspiration and interaction with this field of liquid light. Um, it's we begin, the more you embrace this knowing, the more you'll realize how powerful you are, and this is what helps to awaken all these senses that we forgot we had. So yeah, fun stuff. So here we are again with the swastikas, and I know I keep introducing them, but again, this spin and direction of spin is so important, and this is why this is such an iconic symbol. It's these are prehistoric stones, right? With these swastikas, dual opposing spins, of these swastikas. One of this is 7 to 10,000 years old. The other one is around 7,000 years old. In Armenia and in Iran. Why are they etching these things? And again, I think it's, we utilize, symbolism to remind us, or even to denote the power of a certain understanding. And I can't say how important it is we understand that this dance of the spin, in the reversing directions, is something we really need to understand. And it's showing us again dual ways of looking at the world. It's been known, we see it as a symbol. We've talked about this, of the Nazis, but they just took a symbol. The Nazis, the Germans at that time, were really studying all these different things. They were scanning the world for ancient, powerful artifacts and knowledge, and so they use this as their symbol because they understand how powerful it is, as a symbol of divinity and spirituality, and so much more. In Hinduism, the right-facing symbol clockwise is called swastika, symbolizing Surya, who represents the sun, right? The force of nature of the sun, prosperity and good luck, while the left-facing symbol counterclockwise is called Swastika, symbolizing night or tantric aspects of Kali. So again, dual opposing spins representing day and night. All right, ways again. We have a day and night day cycle. We have spring into summer, fall into winter. We have the day and night concept on a yearly annual cycle, and we have that same concept on a great year or precession of equinoxes, that 24 to 26,000 year cycle. We still have those 4 seasons, that day and night, and we are in the night. Again, it's time to wake up. We keep getting told that the great awakening is on the horizon. This is what they mean, the dawn of a new day cycle. Because we have a reversal of spin. Keep that in mind. We talked about this in the last podcast, as Mehet, this ancient symbol of the Sphinx with a key on top and a key that turns. Keep this in mind. Which way is the lion facing? Important stuff. And again, all this information about Mehed is being introduced by Robert Schoch right now, and by Manu, Manu, who wrote the book with Graham Hancock, Under the Sphinx. This material is just really exciting. Some of the things that are coming forward and pointing out how powerful the Sphinx, the metaphor of the Sphinx, really is. And so again, just reminding you of the connection to the spin, not only of the planet, but of the heavens above. And the only reason we see the star spinning is because the Earth is spinning. Keep that in mind. The swastika represents the North Pole and the rotational movement around a center or immutable axis. Important.
The ecliptic North Pole or Polaris?
Well, Polaris right now, and at one point when we get back to center, it'll slow down or stop at the ecliptic pole. So yeah. But that's our point of our moment of silence when we're back at the ecliptic pole, and then we'll fall out of balance again. So here we are back in Ethiopia, and you can see, we have these same dual opposing wave spins, depicted as red and black, positive, negative, dual opposing ways of perceiving the world. And this priest in the Ka position, life force itself,
I love that.
defined
You see
by
it everywhere.
exactly, defined by the spin. We have life force because we're spinning. And when we come to a stop, we don't. It's nun. We come back and point to the ecliptic pole, as you just pointed out. And then, boom, we spin again in a perception of the opposite direction.
Mhm.
So, yeah, God is at the center and can be masculine or feminine. And then we spin out to the hands of God, right? So, yeah, again, another ancient symbol depicting wave spin. These were found at Mohenjo-daro in Pakistan, which was on the ancient magnetic equator. And of course, the dual opposing wave spin. They got it. We just
Looks
need
like
to wake up and get it. Right? What were you going to say?
nothing. It just looks like a pair of cufflinks.
I was going to say, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Not sure I'd
Well,
want to wear those.
yeah. Well, no, I just don't think it would fly in our world today.
No. Is it possible, do you think, for the swastika ever to have a holy meaning again in the minds of the people, or has the association with Nazi Germany destroyed that symbol for mankind forever?
I would say absolutely it's possible, because with all my research, I see it as a beautiful symbol now. And I know I'm just one person, but it's about awakening. And, I do think, we will all awaken at some point, in some state of being. And I'm not saying I'm awakened, please. It's just now that I see that it's ancient symbol that is, and I feel I have I'm not saying I'm right, by the way, ever, but I feel I have this much greater understanding of what it represented as life force, right? As the spin. If that's brought forward, yes, mankind can change. And I think it can be. So possible, yes. Probable, hey, it's all in the timing, right?
Well, if you think about it, that symbol, we have examples of that symbol going back, how long did you say? 10, 12,000 years?
Yeah, if not further, I'm
And
just
when was it co-opted by a German political party? 70 years ago, 80 years ago?
exactly. And that again was a great reversal of understanding. So anyway, here we have this beautiful comb, and of course I see the lions, and it's like it's just I've always been attracted to the cats, lions, felines, and understanding their powerful symbolic meaning has me even more aware. This was posted on social media by Jacqueline Engel, who posts many wonderful things. Also a student like I am, and so many others. And she posted this, and I just immediately saw, it's so beautiful. It shows the dual opposing wave spin. It shows these two lions coming back to center,
Hmm.
and it's showing two suns as well, which I think is so interesting. So this dates back to the 6th century, but it's just you see this symbolism, and we use this symbolism today in our designs, and it's not necessarily true that the artist was aware of why they created it. But again, I say these patterns are inherent. This knowing is inherent in our subconscious and in our beingness. It's in our DNA.
Hmm.
And I also believe that when you're in the groove and you're creating and you're painting, and I've done this myself, painted things that I couldn't believe, I had the ability to paint. And it's because I tapped into something I was just, they say channeling. That's a great way to say it. You're channeling the energy that's available to all of us, in the liquid light matrix of all that is. And it has that, they call it, they even call it the Akashic records. It's all there for all of us. And sometimes we're doing it and we don't even know it, right? Um, So again, this is the area that is said to be Tamil Nadu, um, and that we said was, that dividing line in India, uh, where the ancient magnetic equator might have swathed through India on its trip around the world, and why they have such a different, the symbolism, mythology, everything left by that area is so, a little bit different than the northern area. And
Mm.
again, it's much more symbolism. I'm not going to go into it today. That Elizabeth and I had talked about, uh, representing that same dynamic of the two hemispheres and the dual opposing wave spin in India. So again, this also gives you an idea of, there's where on the left is where the ancient magnetic equator is said to have been, going through Giza and then across um, India. It looks a little higher, but close. It is dividing India in half, and then going through Mohenjo-daro and Angkor Wat and all these different areas. And then here on the right, you're actually seeing the current magnetic equator. Um, that is basically all over the place.
Mm.
It's in a state of chaos, which is typical. It's typified by where consciousness is itself. Consciousness drives. These the cycles of consciousness drives how, what we perceive in reality, or what we consider reality. Um, this I found spectacular. It's an image of an ancient Pandian port, Chennai in Tamil Nadu. It's similar, so similar to what we saw in Ethiopia, right?
Hmm. With
Um,
the church is cut out of the rock, hewn down.
exactly, exactly. And look at this. Look at this. It's just incredible, the craftsmanship to create this. It's entirely carved out of one solid granite rock, which is typically 6 to 8 on the Mohs scale, right? That's hard rock. And look at the fine detail of this structure out of one rock. I mean, my gosh, the antiquity. The professor of art history in India said the antiquity of the place may be traced back to megalithic culture. A good number of urn burials found here attest to human habitation here during the megalithic and successive periods. They say that this was in the 8th century AD, but oftentimes, sometimes dating is they utilize writings or different items found at structures. If they don't know the date, they'll sometimes utilize, I think, what are methods that aren't really reliable for dating
Hmm.
these structures. But at any rate, it is spectacular. Again, halls of records.
And there it is in
There it
Ethiopia.
is. Yeah, in Lalibelum and Axum, you see. In this case, it's a basaltic pumice, which is 5 to 6 on the Mohs scale, but again, spectacular. And I've shown you some of the symbolism found at these sites.
Mm.
There's several of these rock cut churches, um, that they just cut out of the rock of the earth itself.
They dug it out essentially.
Yep. These rock cut churches are laid out to represent the holy city of Jerusalem, where the ark is said to originate, right?
If you notice,
Um,
X marks the spot also.
oh, of course. And the four seasons and the four, fields of consciousness, rising and falling. And, that four is the Chacana in South America. It's that symbol is worldwide. Um, kind of like the swastika. So here again, here are the swastikas at La Biela, showing a left spin. So in India, there are 5 temples dedicated to Shiva. These are the ones that we visited. We visited Allan when we did the 5 Elements tour. Um, that represent the manifestation of linga, right? The mound in the 5 elements of nature, named the Pancha Bhuta: earth, water, fire, air, and space, ether, right? They are all aligned in a geographic straight line around 79° east, east 4154 longitude. These temples have existed for thousands of years when there was no satellite technology to measure latitude and longitude. The distance, the distance between Kedarnath and Rameswaram, and again, I'm sorry if I'm destroying the pronunciations, is 2,383 kilometers. Who can explain how they were placed in the same longitude? Specialty of these 5 temples is that they were built according to the yogic sciences and are placed in a certain geographic alignment with each other, so that the entire region reverberated with the possibility they offered, which we are still unable to gauge and unable to understand how they did it.
It
The
sounds
line,
just like Giza. It's a massive
exactly.
construction project to basically harness the power of the earth and
Well,
and bring about enormous fertility.
Well, exactly. And we have I call this the land of Osiris because the north to south line, of the pyramids in Lower Egypt is also called the land of Osiris. And I always say, you've got the path of Viracocha in South America. Here you have this path of Shiva, right? And it's north to south. And then the feminine currents are the horizontal. So you have this interesting, you know, north to south, east to west, paths or currents, creating, where they cross, you're creating little portals. Again, we're just talking about matrices of energy, and how they were harnessing these points and these energetic lines on, the song lines on Earth, telluric currents and what have you. It's just spectacular.
So they weren't, measuring out between the temples. It was just that they were on, they could perceive where this energy line was, and they built the temples along that energy line.
Well, exactly. And, at one time, I think they just perceived it because they could feel the energy from, within. And then as we devolved, I believe they utilized nature to tell them. So I promised that we would, we've talked about how, this path of this separated current of the ancient magnetic equator goes south to Ethiopia, but let's touch on what's going north. And we have this path of the Magdalene, I call it, or Tefnut. So we come to the end of another episode. Next episode is going to be very exciting. We're going to move north and we're going to talk about the path of the Magdalene. So stay tuned for the next episode.
Thanks, everybody. Please like, share, and subscribe. Our website is horusrising.com, and we'll see you soon. Thank you. Thanks, Patricia.
Thanks, Allan.